Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Reality. In this case, we're going to review the Harrington and the Ferry from The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's a very wild book. Basically, let's see here. Every 8 years, Fantastic Witchlight Carnival touches down on your world, bringing joy to one settlement after the next. Its owners, Master Witch and Master Light, know how to put on a good show, but there's more to this magical extravaganza than meets the eye. So, basically, apparently, the party of D&D adventurers gets recruited to help deal with some issues in the Fate. So, brings back, and if you're a fan of the older editions, brings back some characters that are beloved or hated, depending on how you remember those campaigns. Now, let's take a look. We have the Ferry. These are small people, about 3 feet tall. They have wings. And one thing to note about that, since Tasha's Witches of the Coast has been going off of a movable racial ability scores. They are a +2/+1 or 3+1s. They can be placed in any stat that the player wishes to do so. In my opinion, I think this is a good thing. This lets you... yes, this allows the possibility of min-maxing. Although, you don't necessarily have to pick a ace for the min-max. If you want to make it that's power, let's say you want to make a powerful barbarian, well, it's not relatively easy to move the stats around, and hey, we can now turn that wood elf into the perfect barbarian. And while it does tend to gear a little bit more towards the ranger build, a wood elf actually make a kind of cool barbarian. Now let's see here. Languages, again, it is now common, and one other language that you and the DM agree would fit your character. So you can kind of come up with your own languages or use a pre-existing language. Like, say, maybe your fairy would know Sylvian, which would fit. A lot of fae creatures use Sylvian as a language. Maybe your Harrington knows their own lingo, Lepus or something like that. It is a scientific term for rabbit. Let's see here. Creature type, well, the fairy creature type is a fae, so there's that. Although for the Harrington, it's humanoid. Lifespan for both of them is like 100 years. Although for the most part, this doesn't really come into effect unless you're dealing with a setting where, in a situation where the characters are either aged rapidly or are aged regressed. It's a possibility. Height and weight. Well, fairies, again, are small. Although one of the things that they got is the ability of once per day reduce and enlarge, where they can become a medium size or they can become tiny. and all the factors that occur. Aragon, on the other hand, you pick at beginning, at first level, if they are small or if they are medium. Let's see here. Ferry, let's see here. Initially they spoke Elvish, Goblin, or Sylvan, and eventually learned Common. So, right off the bat, you have the possibility of grabbing Elvish, Goblin, or Sylvan. And, of course, with the right background, you can snag all four. They're small, they're like small elves with insectile wings, but each fairy has special characteristics that sets them apart. You know, they have a characteristic on the chart. Let's see. Wings are like those of a bird. You have shimmering multicolored skin. You have exceptionally large ears. A glittering mist constantly surrounds you. You have a small spectral horn on your forehead, like a little unicorn horn. Your legs are insectile. You smell like fresh brownies. And a noticeable harmless chill surrounds you. I don't know. Let's see here. Fae, small. Walking speed is 30 feet. Fairy magic, Druidcraft cantrip. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast Fairy Fire. And at 5th level, you can also cast Enlarge, Reduce with this trait. Of course, once you use it, you can't. Of course, once you use those two spells, you can't cast that spell. Well, Fairy Fire or Enlarge, Reduce, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. But you can cast either of these spells with any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. So, if you're a spellcaster, or even a half spellcaster, or a Eldritch Knight or an Arcane Trickster, you basically snag these spells for free, essentially. You can use either Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma as your spell casting ability for these spells when you cast them. With this trait, you choose when you first start. So, basically, if you're going to go for Eldritch Knight or Arcane Trickster, since those guys use wizard type spells, it would be a good idea to say Intelligence. Likewise, if you're going down the wizard path, go for Intelligence. Same thing with Artificer, Intelligence. If you're going for Druid or Cleric, you're going to go Wisdom. And if you're going to go Bard, Warlock, or Sorcerer, Charisma. So, something to think on in making those builds. Flight. Because of your wings, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. But you can't use this flying speed if you're wearing medium or heavy armor. This is similar to the Aarakocra. Basically, if you think you can make the image of a knight wearing heavy armor, that would be in the back, right in the front ranks, but, swinging a sword and being able to zip, 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 zip around. And, no. Which, in my opinion, stinks. You can't have these little guys, you mean you can't have these fellas flying around wearing heavy armor? Currently, I know of only one flyer that can fly in anything above medium light armor, and that is the winged Tiefling from the Sword Coast Adventures guide. Still, while you might think this limits them from being a frontline fighter, not really. Because if you have a high enough dexterity modifier and you're wearing studded leather, oh yeah, you can do it. You can definitely you might be able to hold your own in the front line still. Annoyingly, a paladin build might not. A paladin build might not work for this guy because paladins are more seen as using strength. But you could make him a dex-based paladin. That is indeed a possibility. It's not the most optimal, but maybe you'll think it's fun. Ranger. Now, let's see how to build this guy. Well, anything that allows being to, well, well, first off, does it wear light? If any class that wears light or no armor, it's probably going to be good with this race. And basically, a lot of magic users that, like wizard, sorcerer, they're going to enjoy playing as that because, hey, 30 feet of movement means, hey, these guys can't hit me with melee weaponry. It's not like they can just run up to me because I could probably hover like 10 feet in the air, which is a relatively safe level, and bad guy gets underneath me and, I mean, okay, okay, well, I suppose technically, they're within 5 feet of each other, but the whole image of the guy trying to strap upward, I mean, it's possible, but it seems comical. Although, if they have a lance, or a halberd, or a glaive, or another weapon that's got reach, now that's a different story. But something like a rogue, that would fit this sort of character. Something, a bard, definitely would fit. I can see that image, playing an instrument while flying around, or flying around, sneaking around, stealing stuff. It depending on how you play your bards and rogues. Now, as I mentioned, frontline fighter, probably not likely. But a barbarian doesn't wear armor, has the option of not wearing armor, and can, has this unarmored defense. If you're basically increasing your strength and increasing your constitution, they're unarmed. Their unarmed defense, unarmored defense is based off their constitution and their dexterity modifier. So, if you're beefing up your constitution, you get 1, you're increasing your AC, and 2, you're increasing your hit points. So, I could see a beefy barbarian Ferry. Oh yeah, weak now. Yeah, that'd be... Now, why do I have a mental image of Arnold Schwarzenegger flying around the sides of a ferry? Someone do that. Somebody do a video. Someone do a movie where you have a beefy ferry. Oh, wait, too late. Somebody already did that one. Very good, parents. Which, is funny, actually, when you think about the idea of a beefy ferry. Well, anyways, let's move on. Like I said, ferry would fit pretty much any class that wants to be mobile. Now, the next race is also a bit of a fun one. The Harrington. If you're a fan of Bugs Bunny, you might like this race. If you loved Zootopia and you like Judy Hopps, you might like this race. If you are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan and you like that Usagi Yojimbo guy, that rabbit samurai fella, you might like this guy. If you like the Easter Bunny, you might like this guy. Let's hear Harrington, because we now have the lovely Harrington. Because, hey, we now have the Harrington on this lovely rabbit race. Let's see here. First up, your humanoid. Size, you are medium or small. You choose this at first level. Speed, is 30 feet. I would have expected it to be more, but don't worry about that one. Hair trigger. This is where things start to stand out. You can add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls. So, let's say you decide to make a strength-based fighter, or a paladin, or a strength-based cleric that all wear heavy armor. Or for the cleric, you pick the domain that gives you proficiency in heavy armor. When you're building a tanky type class that wears heavy armor, in many cases, you are going to dump dexterity. Unless you need dexterity more than some other stat. Yeah. Like say, maybe you want to dump your paladin's intelligence or wisdom. Yeah. Or something along those lines. Because you think that maybe you want to be able to use bows as well as wear heavy armor, which is perfectly valid. But with a, since in many cases we're using standard stat array, and I say you dumped your dexterity, you have an 8 there. This means that when initiative comes up, you have a -1 modifier to your roll. You make the roll, and you subtract 1. This might potentially mean you are behind the roll of the big bad, of the opposition. Which, of course, means they're going to hit somebody before you get a chance to hit them. With this ability, you can now add your proficiency modifier to your initiative. That means you can at least have a +1 to your roll. Now, there are some subclasses that will either grant you advantage on an initiative roll, or will allow you to apply the modifier of another stat, like say your charisma, or your intelligence, or your wisdom, or anything else. But this is a base race ability, and it would be kind of useful for your wizard who wants to get off that fireball right away. Or some other area affecting spell, like say there's a bunch of minions. You want to knock those minions out, so cast sleeping through that, or get them stuck in the web. So, everything on there. That's kind of useful. Being able to get off that first spell, first attack, or get away from this really dangerous dude. Next up, you have proficiency in the perception skill. Well, to be fair, they have big ears, so yeah, We can hear danger. It kind of fits, you know. Maybe they hear something. It's like, I thought I just heard something. And of course everybody else is, you know, starts looking around, listening. You know, these guys alongside of certain other classes that have that ability. Yep, might fit. Lucky footwork. I mean, we've all heard the story about a rabbit, lucky rabbit's foot. Well, in this case, when you fail a dexterity saving throw, you can use your reaction to roll a d4 and add it to the save, potentially turning the failure into a success. You can't use this reaction if you are prone or your speed is 0. So basically, if someone just used webbed on you, you can't use this. If somebody's holding you in a grapple, you probably can't use this. If somebody has knocked you down to the ground, you can't use this. But, let's say you are in a situation where the dragon has just launched its fire breath, and you're caught up in that middle. And let's say that the check is 15, and you roll, and let's say even with your dexterity modifier, it's now a 14 for you. Well, and the number to beat is 15. To meet or beat is 15. Well, you can now use your d4 and roll, pass the check, and now you take half damage. Of course, if you're like 7 away, even with modifiers, it's not going to help you. But if you are within 1 or 2 of the number required, it might be useful. You got a 50-50 chance of meeting or beating. And finally, we have Rabbit. As a bonus action, you can jump a number of feet equal to 5 times your proficiency bonus. You can use this trait only if your speed is greater than 0. You can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, basically, if you are restrained, you're not going to use this. If you've used all your movement, don't jump. You can't jump 10 feet further. But let's say you have 30 feet of movement, and you got a number of bad guys around you. Well, you can now jump 10 feet. And there's no limit as to direction, you know. That being said, if you're going to jump 10 feet up in the air, remember, you take a d6 worth of damage for falling 10 feet. So, keep that in mind. And, but, maybe you use this to jump over the bad guys surrounding you, and you just, after that, you run towards the rest of your group. Something to think of. So, what kind of classes do you think this will work? Well, a lot of them, actually. Because let's see here, adding a d4 to a dexterity saving throw is quite useful. If mind you, you kind of have to be, it's kind of circumstantial. You basically have to be just on the line to determine pass or fails to make it really work. But hey, you have a chance. And it even stacks with a few other things. Hair trigger, being able to essentially have proficiency in initiative. That is useful because, basically you have a better chance of making your turn first, or at least before the bad guy is Perception kind of depends. I mean, if you're in a setting where you have jungles and dark, where folks could be hiding, yeah, having proficiency in perception would be useful, especially on a character that is built with a high wisdom score, such as a cleric or a druid who use wisdom anyways, or a monk who uses wisdom, or a ranger who again uses wisdom. So with those kind of guys, yeah, it goes good with them. And everybody loves perception in general. You know, you want to spot hidden foes. And of course the rapid hop, you know, it's basically a free disengage essentially. Now, one thing to note is for both your Ferry and Harrington, these guys don't have dark vision, so in the Underdark, well, they're going to have some problems seeing things. So, they joined the ranks of the human and a number of other races. Still, let's see here. Oh, one other possible Harrington character. Don't know if he'd actually make him, for anything other than an NPC, is the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, he's always late for an important date. Well, still, that's still, I could see that out. Any race, any class would love to have proficiency in initiative, and that feature actually stacks up with a number of class features. So theoretically, depending on your build, one thing I heard is a little joke. Rolling for initiative. Guy goes, "Oh man, I rolled a 2." Okay, so what is so with modifiers, what is that? Oh, that's a 23. Yeah. I'm guessing that's a Gloomstalker multi-class with... I'm guessing that's a Swashbuckler Rogue multi-class with a Gloomstalker Ranger. Or a Watcher Paladin, you know, depending on how you build that. Still, that is the Ferry and the Harrington. Now, how often do I think they'd come up? One thing to note is The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is an adventure book. So, unlike something like Mordecai's Tome of Foes or Eberron, those are campaign settings. Although Mordecai's Tome of Foes is more of a generic source book. And, well, unless you're actually playing this adventure, I don't see Harringtons and Ferries coming up that often. A Ferry is actually going to be showing up less often, especially in adventure-only settings, campaigns, because they have a rule, which is no flying creatures at first level. That being said, I would not be too surprised if this rule is altered at some point in the future. Reason is, more and more flying races are coming out. And, in fact, in a couple of months, we're looking at the Owlkin. And its prototype, the Owlfolk, has flight in it, built into it. So, who knows? Maybe this rule will be relaxed or removed. I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't play Adventures League, so I wouldn't know. Now, as mentioned, this is an adventure book, so is it unusual for Wizards of the Coast to put races in adventure books? It is, but it's not unique. In fact, a couple other books have races or revised versions of the races. Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Revised version of the Goliath, which basically grants the big mountain boys cold resistance, basically. Another book that has another races, the Princes of the Apocalypse, wherein they have the Genasi from Elemental Evil Companion's Guide. Now, Elemental Evil Companion's Guide is a PDF which has a lot of elemental themed races from the different planes of the elementals. Like the Aarakocra, and the Genasi. And of course, the Genasi are, well, their racial stats are right in here. But, in a way, elemental evil is essentially obsolete, because you can find the races in, first up, the Volus Guide to Monsters. You can find a number of these guys that would be found in, elemental evil there. And as for the rest, like the Aarakocra and Genasi, pick up Wildmount, and you essentially have them all. Personally, the only two races not listed in printed form are currently Grung and Lokatha. Bit nice if they were, but I can kind of understand, and I don't know if they'll ever be printed. But still. In the meantime, now, like I said, I doubt you're going to find these guys in an Adventures League campaign all that often, unless the Wild Beyond Witchlight is being played. That being said, in a home group, and a DM is very generous, and let's say he's heard about these two races, and you happen to have Wild Beyond the Witchlight, or he has it, or she has it, and they bring it out, and it's like, hey, any of you guys want to play fairies or Harringtons? Brings it out, writes up the stats, and drops your character into the world. I mean, something to think of. So, and of course, the Wizards of the Coast are coming out with new races, bringing back some classics. I've heard the Gith are making a comeback, and I've actually read up on them, and I mean, some people kind of complain a little bit about the Gith, and I kind of had to agree a little bit with them. It doesn't quite fit the image of the musketeer sort that likes to headbutt things. But who knows, maybe the final polished version will give them abilities that kind of fit with the traditional image a little bit more. Like say, maybe they have abilities that make them really good with using firearms or alternatively crossbows, because not everybody wants to use firearms in their campaigns, and maybe they have a special charge ability you know, that lets them knock sense into somebody's head. I don't know. But, well, we'll just have to see what happens when they release them officially. Along with every other race. That's good. Well, this is Fantasy Reality. And I hope you enjoy. Listen. Goodbye.